Morning, this is Rich Hoyer. I thought I'd post this video of my yard in North Eugene, Oregon. I was inspired this morning especially by my younger brother who just bought a 2.8 acre property in Utah, south of Provo, and did the same. But the idea was planted by my friend Lori, who suggested I post this. Anyway, here's the entrance of my house looking down Hamilton, which is actually bits and pieces of private and public road. The private parts are not even paved. We're actually in the county and not in the city of Eugene here, and here's looking south towards down lake. So it's a blind corner. This little driveway here is my neighbors, the Minesons, and I have ideas to make this all nice and pretty. Which I already did with some hyacinths and tulips and pansies. I'll fill that with something. And these gorgeous red tulips are on their last legs, but they were the last of the tulips to come open. I planted these last September, and a Daphne odora there, and maybe some sweet peas will come up here. This is what you see when you enter my driveway. I don't own a car, but it's useful to have a place to park one when people come visit. Maybe I'll get one eventually, but this seems like an awful lot of driveway. I've been imagining maybe doing something else with it, putting a big cornfield in here. This is where I stored a huge pile of compost from Lane Forest Products, and an even larger pile of 38 cubic yards of fir bark mulch, which I had delivered in December and carted wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow around the yard and covered what used to be lawn. So my idea is to replace the lawn with something of a shrubby, native, prairie-like woodland, attractive not only to pollinators, birds and insects, but also to the kinds of insects which forage on leaves and flowers, like moths and their caterpillars, and thereby also attract all their predators, such as birds and parasitoid wasps and such, which will also help keep other insects which I consider to be pests, like in the fruit trees and the crops, help keep them under control. The previous owners were really good about planting lots of pollinator-friendly plants, and these beds here are a result of their hard work. Lots of things in the mint and sunflower families, but I've added to them. So over this little clump here, for example, is a native Oregon grape, a native viola, twinberry honeysuckle, which is fantastic for hummingbirds. Be a nice big shrub. See, there's some two clusters of clumps of flowers there. The flowers are always in groups of two in this family. And this is a native lupin, tall lupin. This is the native Ceanothus cuneatus. It gets this far north. The previous owners planted this non-native Ceanothus, just barely hardy here. This is Thursiflorus, but it is native to the southern Oregon coast, also known as California lilac. And this little clump of flowers has been open for some time. When this is open, which is just in a few days, it looks like it'll be full of pollinators. I also planted some two different kinds of native checker mallows, and camas, another lupin. It's not focusing. And the native fescue, Rummer's fescue. The previous owners also had lots of fruit trees. There's an Italian plum, two peach trees here, which are very late to leaf out, but each one has about 30 peaches on them. I'll be lucky to get that many by pruning them pretty heavily, and maybe they didn't respond so well. This is a South African native Phrygius, also called Cape honeysuckle. Should be good for butterflies. The columbine reseeded. Peonies went from bud stage to fully open in a week. There's a bunch of these what appear to be Siberian irises just coming out now. And I think these tall ones will be Dutch irises. The previous owners really liked irises. They're useless for pollinators and birds, but they are pretty, as well as these oriental poppies. I like fragrant as well, so it doesn't have to be native for me to plant it. So I put in 2 of these Daphnes, and I can't wait for them to bloom next year, as well as useful. I put some thyme here and parsley and oregano in the front. The columbine are gorgeous, but these are not necessarily bird attractant. But this one right here looks like our native columbine, which is definitely loved by hummingbirds. Here's some flax. Lots of non-native but insect-friendly plants here, which will be a riot of color. I put some some native shrubs in the middle here, such as this ocean spray, and over there a 9-bark, hoping that the yard will be more friendly to birds that like to skulk in shrubby areas in the winter. The previous owners mostly kept this non-food and then the vegetable garden in the back, but I planted some bush beans around this trellis, which are just coming up now. It's on the early side to plant things like this, but who knows, global warming. So there's some sunflowers over there. There's artichokes over here. Here's a Fuji apple. And yes, I have lots of bird feeders. This is one of 8 hummingbird feeders, and my neighbors over there have 2. Here's the nest box from my friend Titu. Sorry, somehow they got cut out. This is from my friend Titu in France. And the male house wren one, before he had a mate, was stuffing it full of sticks, but the female arrived a week ago. There. And she chose the same nest that the pair used last year. It's hard to know if she's the same female, but it's certainly going to be the same male. They're rare enough here. Here's another peach tree, but it's not well. It has some sort of canker and has apparently never produced very much. All along this west fence is a thornless blackberry, apparently a variety, according to the previous owner, that you can't get anywhere and isn't named, but it produces a lot very delicious berries, and I can't wait to try them. They also planted 7 different blueberry bushes of 2 kinds. Here's the very large berried chandler, and then there are 6 of the small early fruiting duke. And what else? So I planted, thinking global warming again, this Meyer lemon tree right here. Haha. But even if it doesn't like the climate here so much in the winter, it's against the south side of the house, and I can cover it with a frost cloth, and maybe in 20 years time it'll do well. Here's lots of things still popping out of the ground. I knew that there was a perennial here, but I don't know what it is, and it's just sticking its leaves up, so it's way behind everything else. I also planted a rosemary, which actually does quite well here in Oregon in well-drained soils, and this is very well-drained soil. Peppermint, hope it's invasive because I love peppermint, and some native here. There's a checker mallow and a delphinium, and I dug up a whole bunch of the bearded irises in the back when I made my compost piles, and I just randomly plunked them in the ground here, and they're doing well, except for one. What it's doing, I saw that this morning, it looks like it's starting to rot, or something chewed on it. That's fine. Got more of those than I need. These are the clumps of sunchokes from the previous owners, who really never really harvested them much. There's some little ones that have strayed up to the side. This clump I dug up. I dug up what I thought was all of it and got 25 pounds of tubers out of it. So this one has at least that much in it, and I stuck about 4 back into the ground, but it looks like there's more than that there, so I probably missed some. They'll re-sprout from anything. They grow really tall, the tall sunflowers up to there, and are great for birds and insects. Some of the blueberries. An agastache that I transplanted from the front garden, and some more native shrubs to make the garden shrubbier. This is ocean spray, another 9-bark over here, and a geum that I transplanted from the front. And I put in rhubarb and strawberries. Oh, and then over here I put in a moonflower that I started from seed, so not useful for birds or bees, and not edible, but beautiful and fragrant. So those are my qualifications. These are mostly volunteers or things that survived from last year's plantings from the previous owners, Sweet William and Wallflower and Calendula, this Columbine. Here's the bearded iris. There's another native Indian plum. Oh, of course, there were mason bee houses, and they've redone this one. There's the wren on his box. Not sure where the female is now, but she might be inside or off collecting sticks. And there was a house sparrow there that they've been fighting with. The house sparrow can't get into the box, but it goes in and removes sticks from their nest. They have other boxes they can use, but I'm going to try to get rid of them. And here's the brush pile, which is an absolute must for anyone wanting to attract birds to their backyard. This is cuttings from the fruit trees when I prune them, the sumacs out front, lots of other branches and stuff. Oh, and there's a big lilac in the front corner that was starting to become very invasive after suffering from some damage from last year's heavy snowstorm, and it was putting out suckers and roots some 10 or more feet away from the plant. It was going to take over that front bed, so I took that out. More natives here, shrubs and flowers like the checker mallow. Here's the native checker mallow just blooming. This is I think Sadausia virgata, and this is the native aster. Used to be aster, it's now a different genus. Campestris. No, not Campestris. I can't remember. Another red flowering currant. I've got 5 of those here, maybe 6. Here's the blue elderberry. I'm going to put cucumbers against this south-facing wall. And this huge clematis was falling over without a proper trellis into the neighbor's yard, so I built 2 trellises, and there was a young one over there, and they seem to be really very well placed to block the window-to-window view I have into my house from the neighbor's windows. But these are going to get big, so I built this trellis, and then all the way across they're going to go on the wires there. These are the organic raised vegetable beds from the previous owners. Mixed success here with sprouting of carrots maybe too soon. So I have at least 4 cilantros, half a dozen carrots, and then lots of other veggies here, mizuna and spinach, beets, arugula, and it looks like I have a mole. I was warned. They're not bad for plants per se, but if they happen to burrow under a plant and break its roots, it will die. Another caneberry in the yard here, I forgot to point out, was this non-native Himalaya blackberry, which apparently used to be completely cover this entire lot. It was half over this house before it was restored 2 years ago. And of course it's almost impossible to get rid of it all, but there's just one stalk left, and the previous owners and the neighbors, since this is actually on the other side of this fence, left this one, and it has amazingly delicious berries. So we left one stalk, and it's going to arch over and have this. It'll get cut down, and it'll put up 2 or 3 other little runners, and let's just keep it under control by digging up. So every year there's just 1 or 2 main canes surviving the winter. Here are some Oregon grapes that replaced what used to be bamboo, a non-native bamboo that has absolutely no purpose except to provide a night roost for house sparrows. So nice and native there. Here's the raspberry, and I will have 1 plant here that'll probably be plenty of food for me, but if it suckers, then I'll have a small hedgerow right here in the middle of what used to be lawn. I stuck some of the perennials from the front here. I don't even know what this one is yet, but it's going to be good for pollinators. Started some potatoes in grow sacks. These are strawberries that were already here, and I put them in a pot. Native ceanothus again. This one actually is blooming a little tiny bit, but this plant grows pretty slowly. It'll probably be a couple years before it gets 3 or 4 feet high. Here are the vegetable beds. Onions from my neighbors. She got 50 starts and didn't need them all, so I think she got 100. She gave me 40 of them or so. So I'm gonna have more onions than I can possibly eat, and the radishes, which I sowed 4.5 weeks ago, are ready to eat. This is the native aster, or subspicatus is what it is. And there's also native scrophularia, which I bought from a local gardener and landscape designer who does native and useful plants. And I put some cosmos in here, and that's to attract as many of the pollinators as possible for the pumpkins and Hubbard squash I'm going to plant in this whole area here. Here's the big hedgerow of Marionberries with at least 12 floricanes that are covered in flower buds. It just started to bloom. I'm going to have lots of Marionberries. I need to get a chest freezer. Best Buy is sold out of chest freezers. Here's a yellow plum, and I think I mentioned I have lots of bird feeders, but I also have lots of kinds of bird feeders, so I'm ever hopeful that an oriole will show up. Bullock's oriole breeds regionally here, but very locally, and there are possibilities of vagrants. Here's the bearded iris hedge where I dug up and stuck in piles for compost. And here's a view of the deck. The table goes here when it's showery, or the sun is too intense. And this is one of the 3 or 4 places I like to sit and have my morning coffee, watch for birds as they migrate over, fly over. And then here's the doorway back into the carport with the garbage and storage of tools, and another row of rain barrels from the roof here, and a workstation where I build my bird boxes, where I raise caterpillars into moths to see what they are. I think they're mostly going to be large yellow underwings, make more mason bee houses, and that's my yard.